Reedfield, Maine. Please rise and join me in pledging allegiance to the flag. I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, and welcome to the March 5, 2018 Reedfield Select Board meeting. We have a fairly full agenda tonight. If it pleases the board, I'd like to move appointments up to right after we do the minutes and the warrants. Is that okay with the board?
Yeah, that'd be fine.
We do have some folks here. So great, and then we'll go to communications and proceed from there, and if we have anything that does need to be considered in that slot, because somebody comes in later, we'll handle that at that time. I don't think we do. So we'll proceed with minutes. Before you, in your packets, you have two sets of minutes. One for February 5 and one for February 22nd. We'll take them individually. Let's start with February 5. Were there any corrections?
I move that we approve the minutes of February 5th, 2018, as submitted.
Second. It's been moved and seconded to accept the minutes of February 5th as printed. Any discussion? Seeing none, all in favor? Thank you. We'll proceed with February 22nd. Any discussion or notes on that prior to a motion? Could I have a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the meeting minutes of February 22nd, 2018.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes for the Select Board meeting for February 22nd, 2018. Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you. We'll move on to warrants 35 and 36. Chris?
Okay, warrant 35. There was $4,674 for the recycling repair. Cushing Construction, next to the last payment, and plus the 10%, for $26,795. There was a other income, Kennebec Savings Bank, it was a return of too much tax collected. The school was in there, $293,966
And 33 cents.
and 33 cents. And the payroll is $14,573.80. Two state fees, one for $1,689.50, one for $4,559.50. So we have a total warrant, 35 through 36, of $375,235.15, which I move we accept.
Second?
It's been moved and seconded. Is there any discussion on warrants 35 and 36? I do have a question. Just on number one on the repair, Eric, the $46.75.
Yes.
Is that the total cost, or will there be a forthcoming bill as well?
That is the total. We got the first bill for a couple of $1,000s, and it hadn't included the motor. It was that was for the labor and the some other accessories.
2,000.
Yeah. So this is the complete cost. So I'll just back up and say yes. That's the full
Okay.
cost.
Okay,
Yep.
great. Any other questions or discussion?
Have the transfer station personnel been trained on how to prevent any future catastrophe?
We've initiated a different maintenance program based on that issue.
Thank you.
I'm not sure else how to put it, but yeah, we had to make some changes.
The bottom line is the expense that we ended up being obligated for had some action to follow up on it.
Absolutely.
So that we can avoid it in the future.
Absolutely.
And the postage for $1,500, is that approximately annual?
That's front-loading for anticipated expenditures. We usually do 2,000 to 3,000, I believe, annually for postage when you combine all the departments. But we do have a couple of mailings coming out, quite likely a postcard going out for the budget process. That'll be about 550. So we just typically would be reloading at around 1,000, but we added the 500 extra just to make sure we had fully what we needed.
Great. Thank you for
Okay.
doing that, Chris.
Great. I guess we're all set. It's been moved and seconded to approve warrants 35 through 36 in the sum of $375,235.15. All in favor of the motion? Thank you. And then we'll proceed to appointments, reappointments, and resignations. So first, we'll regretfully accept the resignation of Cricket Lewin from the Library Board of Trustees, and in your packet is actually a note from her. She has some schedule conflicts and is unable to continue. So I'm going to move that we accept that resignation with regrets.
Second?
Any discussion? All in favor? Thank you, Cricket. We're also announcing on behalf of the road committee that they have a vacancy. So that appointment is, somebody could join the road committee, so if you do have an interest in that, the information to apply is on the website. If you have questions, you could call the road commissioner, which is Eric, or you could call a member of the committee, just discuss what they do, how often they meet, and so on and so forth.
Resignation?
No, they did not have a resignation. Basically, we don't know. I mean, it may be a schedule conflict or whatever, but they had a vacancy due to non-attendance.
That's why the section of the policy relating to board and committee appointments and reappointments was included. Section B discusses a vacancy by default.
Oh.
So, yeah.
Okay, we'll consider the appointment of Lydia Adelson to the Cemetery Committee. Lydia, would you please approach the microphone? Thank you and welcome, and thank you for applying for this. This is just an opportunity for anybody on the board to ask you a question or two if they wish, and for you to say anything you would like to address to the board regarding your appointment. I think it's forthcoming fairly quickly here to the Cemetery Committee.
Thank you. It's a wonderful opportunity. I've been on before, and there's an opening, and I'd like to come back.
We'd like to have you back.
Thank you.
Especially because you think it's fun.
Yeah, that was going to be my
I like
remark.
that.
It is fun. It's
I like
been
that,
very
it's fun. Any other questions for Lydia? Any questions for us?
No?
Great.
I'll make a motion to appoint Lydia Adelson to the Cemetery Committee
Second?
for a period, ending on 6/30/18, beginning tonight.
Now I'll second it.
Great. Thank you very much.
That runs through 6/30/18?
Yeah, it's just until June.
Okay, okay, so it's filling a term.
You're
Yes.
John Moran.
So-
Yes.
Yes, okay, so my question would be, hopefully you're interested in staying beyond that date.
I'm not sure yet, just yet,
Okay.
but I'd
okay.
like to get back in and then see how my scheduling goes.
Okay, great, thank you.
Great, thank
I've
you.
actually seen Lydia on so many committees, and I just automatically thought she was on the cemetery committee.
Okay.
Good. But thank you.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Okay, well, it's been moved and seconded to approve the appointment of Lydia Adelson to the Cemetery Committee for the term noted through 6/30/18. All in favor? Thank you so much.
Thanks, Lydia.
Okay, thank you.
You're
Can I
welcome
take
to
your
stay,
pen?
you're welcome to leave.
I saw you eyeballing me.
Yeah, that was
We're
me.
considering the appointment of Stephen Monslick to the Reedfield Enterprise Committee.
I don't think he's here.
He's not here because he is actually an appointed individual already in the town, so he's appeared before a previous board. He is our first park representative, and occasionally he has reported at town meetings or in writing or whatever with us. I know Steve very well. He used to own Kents Hill Lumber, and he, as a member representing this town for many, many years on First Park, which has not been easy duty, I think, is
That's true.
something that, you know, I think puts him in good stead. I did ask Steve to consider doing this, so I'm going to move his nomination.
I'll second that.
It's been moved and seconded to appoint Stephen Monslick to the Reed Field Enterprise Committee for a term through June 30th, 2019. Is that correct?
Yes.
That is correct.
Okay.
I'm sorry.
Any discussion?
Yes. What is the width limitation? I approve use my email with limit. Is that just he like that has nothing bearing on his appointment? That's just his preference for his.
Yeah, I have no
personal
idea. I have
info?
no
Oh,
idea.
okay.
Yeah, actually, I do not. I'm reading that for the first time. Typically, email communications for us and for the Budget Committee and for the Planning Board
Oh,
have
okay.
certain legal standing. I don't think it would be for the Reed Field Enterprise Committee.
Okay. I just didn't want him to worry. Okay.
I have to ask Steve, I don't
Okay,
know what the
cool.
the
Yeah.
note means.
Maybe he didn't
Just
want a
a-
town email address or something.
Right.
Or maybe he doesn't like email. I don't know.
Yeah. Just something maybe follow up.
Okay,
Good catch.
thank you. All in favor? Very good. We'll move on to Matthew Guba. Is that how we pronounce it? That's correct. Great. Why don't you go right up to the microphone? This is an appointment for the Reed Field Enterprise Committee as well, right?
Correct, yes.
Correct. Well, good. Tell us a little bit about yourself. Are you new to town?
Yes, well, we moved here, my wife and I, about 2 years ago. So I actually work down in Boston, or that's where our company's headquartered, but about 5 years ago, they started a work from home initiative. So I've been working from home 4 days a week for about 4 years now. And 2 years ago, we had twins, and then we had our third recently, but at the time where my wife is staying at home and I'm obviously working quite a bit, we had the flexibility to move because of the work from home. And her parents live about 20 minutes from us up here. And so with my parents in Austin, Texas, and hers closer, where we wanted to be in the Northeast, it made sense for us to kind of move up here. So we got here about 2 years ago, and we've been settling in, and now that we've been here, we love it. We don't want to leave. So I kind of thought it would be a good time to try and get involved in the community where, you know, we want to raise our children and be for quite some time, hopefully.
I absolutely
Nice.
welcome that. That's wonderful to hear.
Thank you.
Are there any questions for Matthew?
No, I just want to thank him for stepping forward. That's really great.
Absolutely.
Thanks,
Yes.
we need that.
Well, and I really appreciate the financial planning and that
Exactly.
kind of.
That's just what that committee needs.
Yep, absolutely. The right experience, good fit.
Well, now that you've made this offer, we'll probably just keep badgering you.
That's totally fine,
Re-up.
honestly. I've been on paternity leave for like 2 months, so I am ready to do anything.
Okay, well, we'll save you then. I'll make a motion to appoint Matthew Guba to the Reed Field Enterprise Committee for a term beginning tonight and going through 6/30/21.
Second?
Been moved and seconded to appoint Matt Guba to the Reed Field Enterprise Committee for a term through 6/30/2021. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Thank you and welcome.
Thank you.
You're welcome to hang around for a while. You're welcome to get home and deal with those twins.
I think my wife would appreciate it.
And thank you for attaching a CV. That-
Yeah, I didn't know what the best thing to do would
That
be,
just
so.
was helpful. It gave us some good background.
Perfect.
Thank you.
Yeah, I look forward to working with you. The only thing, I don't know, when is the first meeting, or when should I plan on coming back?
The committee has been go ahead. You're a member, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
We're just getting the committee back together, so by email, we'll let you know when we're gonna have our first meeting.
Perfect. Sounds fantastic. Thank you all. Have a wonderful evening.
Thank you, man. Absolutely.
Have a good night.
Oh,
Enjoy those kids.
Dennis, 2 N's and Dennis.
2 N's in Dennis or otherwise.
We'll move
Looks
on
different.
to communications. So we'll start with Select Board Communications. Anybody have anything they
I
wish to
have
know?
2 things. There's no Heritage Days this year,
Okay.
but we're still having
On
a...
schedule.
We're still having a beanhole dinner, and we're still having a library book sale, and we're still having the soaker out front of the library. So what I'm doing is I'm putting together a family fun day, which will be no cost to the town, but it will involve some of the same people that came for Heritage Days. And we're gonna try to get enough activities so people will come to town and stay for, we're trying to get Dennis to be free for a little comedy.
Get what you pay for, right?
That's right. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, I think that's great.
I don't want the whole Heritage Day thing, everybody had such a good time.
Yeah.
And they're coming for the library book sale, and they're coming for the Beanhole Dinner.
Yeah.
Let's put something in between the two and have
Yeah.
a day.
That sounds great.
That's what I'm working on. Second thing I'm working on is Halloween. The kids trick or treat at the library, the fire hall, and I'm gonna have them do a spooky walk behind the library on that little tiny trail. And then walk down, after they trick or treated at those two places, down to the town office, and we'll have trunk or treat. Everybody parks their car, opens the trunk, and has treats.
That's a great idea.
Nice.
That's
More-
taking care of my goal of family activities.
There you go.
That's great.
Oh, that's great. Thanks for doing that. That's,
Thank you, Chris.
yeah.
You're welcome.
Those are great.
I have a question, concern, idea. I don't know where it falls in there, but went into the transfer station on Tuesday. What's today? Monday?
Monday.
So it must have been Friday, ahead of the weekend, and
Yes.
we were sinking in a little bit, and the guy said that they were really sinking in over the weekend previous. And so, since I sit on the solid waste committee, Glenn and Mike were asking me, would there be any possibility that even though Mike's been putting a lot of material in the road, that we could possibly think of opening the other end of the road just during the time when cars are like bottoming out? And maybe that would be like an emergency measure kind of thing. I know that we had,
The other end, you mean the old entrance?
right, where it's paved all the way
Yeah.
through.
Yeah.
I mean, we had closed that a number of years
That is
ago.
pretty rough.
Because
I mean,
we
they're
had some
doing-
concerns about traffic, but as far as we know, there have never been a serious accident there. There've been a couple little fender benders over many years, but just thinking of the trade-offs.
Yeah.
So,
Well, I'll say quickly that I've had a number of people request that and suggest that. I have so far been unwilling to open that up, in large part because of the traffic coming out of an intersection that hasn't been used for 10 years. Very much have a concern with the speed on that road and the visibility that I'd rather, I mean, it's kind of an unfortunate trade-off. I do talk in my report today about what we're going to be doing to address some of that, but it seems, it's a hard sell for me to say that we're going to open that up and let folks come in and out of that drive when there hasn't been traffic there for a long time and it was closed because of this concern about safety.
right.
So that's been my position on it. Certainly open to other compelling suggestions about, and the road has been firming up, and I mean, if it was impassable, absolutely we would do that, but I think until it gets to that point, or close to it, I'd much prefer to stay safe and muddy than
I
than
agree.
take the other approach. But that's just my position. Like I said,
But I think if we were going to have cars stuck there, it might be a good idea to
Might
still
not
be
go
able
with
to
the big-
open the facility but have access. So,
That
just my
road
2
is-
cents.
That road is very rough. It's,
Yeah.
Yes, I wonder, and I mean, I'm not arguing against safety, but it's hard for me. And I'll tell you, I drive an old two-wheel drive truck, and, it's not so much getting to the facility, it's getting out that I worry about. So I understand that, and I think that's a valid concern. My brain begins to brainstorm about, could we request the presence of, could we have a sheriff or something? Could we have some sort of way that drivers, as soon as they turn onto that road, are aware? Can we do a good job of letting people know, hey, 10 years ago there was can we alleviate that problem by having some sort of caution or some sort of thing? But I'll tell you something. I just think of the liability. Somebody gets stuck there, something happens to somebody's car, because the road is awful. And I
It
know
is,
that it's,
yeah.
I know that it's on its way. So those would be my concerns, like it seems like an easy thing to open it up, and I understand your concern. Can we be proactive in letting people know that there may be traffic? Because it's going to get worse. I don't know much about anything, but that's the truth.
Any other select board
Too bad you didn't
comments?
have anything to say about that.
I guess, Eric, I would just chime in, it sounds like it's worth taking some further look at and consideration. Maybe we can even do it as a loop. Maybe we come in one way and exit one way, and that halves
Yeah.
the traffic on part of
Yeah.
it or something.
That's been suggested, and I know that there is a lot of concern about the traffic and the condition of the road, and, I don't know if it's gonna, the snowbanks have melted away quite a bit. We do keep adding material. It's maintained almost daily, to try to keep it in shape. When we have, I think that, yeah, I'll think about it. I still am a bit concerned. And so far as I know, no one has gotten stuck. We've had some slippery, we've had some yuck coming up on the vehicles, but so far as I know, no one's gotten stuck. And so,
We don't need to get
Yeah,
into a deep
yeah.
discussion tonight,
Right.
but I think that,
Right.
there's some concern from the board, and we're hearing it from residents, so
Absolutely.
I would just,
yeah.
spend some time on it at least. Go ahead, John.
Seeing as we're going through the budget process, is there any thought of bringing back paving to that road?
A lot of thought, and I mentioned that in my report, but in order to really pave adequately, we need to fix, what's there. And part of the trouble is that road literally is in spots 30 feet wide, and those snowbanks really aren't even in the ditches in places. And when you have a road that's that wide and that's that flat, the water has no place to go, and it just sits there. Last weekend, it was like, driving on the ocean. You would have the crest of one mud puddle before you went into the trough of the next. And there's no pitch to it. And the work that we would budgeted for this year, that will be done this spring, will help correct a lot of that by narrowing up the road, extending the ditches, putting a proper pitch on it. Because right now it's just flat, and the water does not get off, and it's impossible to have a road that's in any kind of shape without a proper pitch to it. So the first step is the gravel road work, that repair that will happen this spring, and none too soon. Once that happens, I think that we will very likely have the ability to pave the next year, the year after. Right now, we haven't budgeted for that. However, we do have money in the budget that could be used, in the capital reserve, I should say, for a paving project that could take care of that whole issue. So,
Because we've added some traffic there. And do we have any idea how much traffic we have added by taking?
20 to 25%. Yeah.
That's considerable when you're talking a road, a road like that takes quite a beating. And,
It does, yeah.
there were some people on prior select boards that thought we had to build, 295 going into the transfer station for some reason, and, I think we can do a good job there. And that is a good start, by putting good product on the road.
Yeah.
And shedding the water off from it, that'll probably help, but I personally think we need to move towards paving that thing, if not this year, then next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, the work that's done this year will bring it up to the standard for an institutional access road. We need to add a few more inches of gravel on one end outside of what's being done to just grade and take care of the issue. But we will be able to pave, and in good conscience and in compliance with our own directives for institutional roads as in the land use ordinance. So we will be able to do that if we choose to. And it sounds like we're probably going to choose to, but
I was really just mentioning this as kind of an emergency measure, that, if it
Yep.
gets that bad in the next few weeks and you need to open the other road to keep the station open, that's really more what I was raising as an issue, not trying to have a road discussion, but
Yeah.
Well, it's a necessary discussion because, you
Yeah,
know,
it is. I can't imagine
Yeah.
anyone with a small car that's going in there, because I drive a pickup, and I have to really take it slow in there. Anybody that has a car that's low to the ground.
Is the road part of the capital cost sharing?
yes.
it is, yes.
Okay.
Yep, yep.
Any other, anything else from any other members of the select board? Thank you. Oh, go ahead, John.
That road is not part of the road system in Reedfield.
It's not, it's been completely
So how does it-
removed from the discussion the road committees have.
When they go on the capital budget of the solid waste committee, is that what you're saying?
That's where it
Oh,
lives
That's
right,
correct.
that's where it lives
Oh,
right
okay.
Is
now.
a cost-shared
Right.
budget, so that's,
Yeah,
And all the
that's why I
towns-
asked that question.
yeah,
All three towns are aware
Yeah.
of that
yeah,
and have their own opinions.
okay.
Well, oh, that's off. I mean, Fayette put money away and then we didn't do it.
Oh, it was
so.
Wayne, yes.
Wayne did that,
Yeah, that's
yeah.
right,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly.
And that's a sunk cost. They're not going to reoffer that because they are chipping into the account
Yeah.
now. So,
Yeah.
Right.
yeah, I think this one's going to get moved up on the process.
Good.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to staff reports. What do you want to start with,
I
Eric?
also,
Let's start
real
with
quick,
roads,
with,
yeah.
Okay.
if, one more thing on, solar power. And we're gonna meet after the select board meeting, just to kind of plan ahead. We hit a roadblock, I hit a roadblock, and we need to work around that. I think like Bruce, do not want to drop this. We need to move forward with it and find the best solution that we can for that. Because I think it's very important. This isn't a,
If-
fly by night.
The array is not going to be where it was originally planned.
Well, it might not, it might, I don't know. That's what we have to work around.
John and I kind of are the subcommittee on that, so what
Yeah.
we're going to do is just touch base with Eric and see how we can bring stakeholders into the process
Yeah.
and do some planning work together.
Yeah.
We both feel it's, it was one of our select board goals. We feel it's very important. We also feel that there's a very long-term benefit to the town,
Right,
so we want to,
I don't think there's any denying that.
yeah.
yeah. Okay, thank you. Eric?
All right. Start with maintenance and infrastructure, and let everybody know that town roads should all be fully posted. If you see a vacancy on a telephone pole where an orange sign should be, let us know. We should have one at each end of every road in town that's not a dead-end road. So if you see something missing, let us know. We had a notice of two or three that we'd missed, and that those were addressed today, but always looking for feedback. Also, please respect those signs because they are that protection for our road infrastructure in the springtime, and it's now springtime in mid-March, early March.
Do we not post dead-end roads?
We do, we just post at one end,
Yeah,
so
okay.
that was the
Yeah.
nature of that comment. But
Yeah.
we did not, we didn't get everything the first time. I think that we are very close now, if not fully covered, so just let me know if you see anything.
But just so people will know, the roads are posted, but in emergency situations, like if somebody's well goes out, or there are some permits that, by contacting you,
Absolutely, yes. Yep.
arrangements can be made.
Yep.
So it's not like,
It's
we don't
not-
care
yeah.
if you don't have any water, type of thing.
Yeah,
It's,
and if the roads are solidly frozen, of course, it's okay to travel on them,
Yeah.
so. The other comment is that the town did not receive funding for the Church Road sidewalk this year. However, only current projects were funded, so it wasn't as though we did not make the cut or the muster. There was just not enough money to go around, so they were only able to fund projects that were currently in process.
yeah.
So that's still out there, although it's not going to be anything immediate. It will still be, 3 to 4 years down the road before any potential construction could happen, and we will have to go through the process again next year for the application.
We would have to resubmit the entire application.
We can submit an amended application, which I think is the best option for us.
Okay.
Because we did score very well in many areas, and there were a couple areas where feedback indicated that we could up our score, and we will work on those areas and resubmit.
Okay.
Excellent.
When are you gonna resubmit, or when's what's the timeline?
I'd have to look.
Okay.
Yeah, it
all right.
was a couple months
Yeah,
off.
no problem.
Yeah.
Sorry, my phone was beeping. I gotta turn that off. All right. Personnel, Keith Sylvester is quickly adapting to the maintenance position. He's completed most all of his training. I don't think there's anything really left except for perhaps some of the programs offered by Safety Works, which he would attend in Augusta. And he's starting to catch up on some of the building maintenance needs that have been put off for a while now. And I'll announce that we will be hiring for a seasonal full-time beach monitor and superintendent, as well as part-time seasonal swimming instructors. We very much hope to reorganize how we manage the activity at the beach, and also to bring back swimming lessons at the beach for the young kids in town, which I think is a great asset. The rec board, I had a good meeting with them. They're very, very optimistic and excited about that prospect, and so everybody's rowing in the same direction, trying to make sure that we can get that programming back that might help incentivize people to use the beach, get the beach passes, but also to provide a good community service, because we've got a lot of lakes and kids need to learn how to swim.
Yeah.
So. Transfer station, the recycling compactor was repaired a few weeks ago, and it's back in full operation. And I just want to thank everybody again who was patient while that was underway. And then I have 5 or 6 sentences here about the issue we just talked about, explaining my position and my feeling about the safety, which I will look very closely at and consider all possible options to make sure that we are meeting everybody's needs and being safe at the same time. So. Moving on to announcements, we have a few key budget committee and budget meetings coming up, very, very important meetings. The first is this coming Wednesday, the 7th, 6:30 p.m., the high school. I call it the cafeteria, but they call it the student room or student resource room or something to that effect. But this is when we talk about the school budget with the school board. The Reedfield Select Board will be present. Most of you, John won't be able to attend because he'll be out of town, but I very much hope that members of the public can attend to hear and speak out about the process and the budget. The second item is the public budget workshop, and this is something equivalent, as close as we could possibly come, to a town meeting discussion about the budget, and an opportunity for folks to get together and talk about the goals, the priorities, and the actual budget numbers that we have prepared for them to review and eventually vote on. It will be March 29th, 6:30 p.m. here at the town office. And again, I can't overstate, every meeting that we have, whether it's the select board or the budget committee, is open to the public. But if you had to pick one meeting to go to that had the opportunity to learn about and make recommendations for changes, this is it on March 29th. So
This is like the town meeting in the sense of you can advise the budget committee and the select board that you feel an item should be changed.
Absolutely.
When we do the meetings that follow that, those meetings are to comment on whether or not an item should pass or fail. And so this is where we can hear your input. And I'm speaking to you, but I'm actually speaking to the
Well, yeah, well, I think we're all
the
speaking to
public,
each other, but
yes,
speaking to
but
the public, yeah.
I just want to make sure that that's, and this is the one we're thinking of putting the postcard out on.
We will have a postcard going out for this, and also it will include that second meeting that you referenced, which is the budget and warrant hearing. And that's when we'll be talking about the things that you identified, as well as more detail and the more formal hearing process for the warrant articles that are in ordinance form.
Right, and the postcard will talk a little bit about the difference between the two meetings.
Yes,
And-
we'll have a short summary
Yeah,
for each.
Great, thank you.
Are we gonna invite school board members to attend that? Seeing as there might be some questions about the school budget?
That's an excellent suggestion. I'll make a note to invite some.
And just so folks will know, the select board has no power over the school budget other than as individual residents who vote on the school budget.
I'll invite them to both of those meetings.
Yeah.
And I know two people that are serving our community right now on that board that might be interested, so, as well as we could also invite the superintendent or
Right.
the finance
Right.
people, if that's helpful, but.
Yeah, I do, I have a little bit of a caution on that. I do recommend that people, I mean, the RSU is a government entity, and we do vote as four communities, as individual voters at the ballot box for that budget, and so the detail that she would get at an RSU meeting would certainly be much greater, with better answers, with the financial officers there and so on and so forth, than you would get from a school committee member who really may be looking at the whole aggregate of the thing.
Very
So
good.
just a thought, you know.
It's a good observation.
Yeah.
Absolutely, yeah. Okay, so I made a note to invite at least our school board members to attend.
Right.
And the last announcement I have is that due to winter weather, I want to give folks advance notice that we may be closing for part of the day on Wednesday or Thursday. Thursday is looking like quite a mess. Wednesday, I think we're going to be able to sneak through the working day without having to close or make any adjustments. But Thursday is looking quite bad.
When do you
Along-
think the school would close the meeting? If they're gonna not have the school open that night?
If they, I have the alerts that come through from the schools, so if they cancel after-school activities, athletic activities, that's kind of when they make the decision, I think, about the board meeting. From what I heard, is we probably would be okay for that meeting.
I think we can squeak through, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but,
Because my channel had it being, that's no visibility, lots of snow from that point through the next morning.
Sometime Wednesday night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The way the schools work it is if they cancel all after-school activities, then the building is shut.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter who was using it,
Right.
community, athletics,
Adult ed
students,
would be,
adult,
yeah.
right.
Yeah.
So it's just kind of stay tuned to what happens at the end of the school day.
You're welcome to call me on Wednesday if you have a question about it, because I intend to go to the meeting, so I'll be monitoring whether or not it's occurring.
Great. If you could put it up on the website, that would be, if it gets canceled,
absolutely.
if someone could
yes.
post that, that would
Yeah.
be awesome.
Yeah, we will.
And I'm assuming it'll be a postponement anyhow, so
Right.
it'll just be the
Yeah.
meeting.
So
Okay.
that's my report.
Thank you very
Excellent,
much.
Thank you.
Um,
I'm sorry we preempted part of it.
That's okay. You folks,
That was quite a preamble.
we're all on the same page. We're talking, thinking about the same things, so. Yeah.
Let's move on to,
Do you want to go back to the minutes?
yes, I do. Boards, committees, commissions, and departments. I want to thank the Cemetery Committee for their minutes of January 17, the Library Board minutes for January 3rd, the Budget Committee minutes for January 25th, the Rec Board minutes for October 16th and November 29th of 2017, and the RSU for the budget update, which is also in the packet. I did want to just make a remark on committee minutes. And I read through every single word of the Budget Committee minutes for January 25th.
Yeah.
These are very detailed. They're really excellent, and I really recommend to the public, and I did check, they're online, but they give a lot of the reasoning and what kinds of questions were asked for increases or decreases in different departments. It's, if you look at it, I think in your packet, it's like 4 pages.
Yeah.
It's very detailed, but it's well-written in terms of just, it gives you the flavor of the discussion and how the Budget Committee has looked at various items in depth and what questions they asked Eric or departments and each other. So I think it was just an excellent set of minutes to look at, to get some background, and I really will look forward, and I would urge that we, as soon as we can have them approve their Budget
Yeah.
Committee meetings, get them on the website, because they form a background of information that's useful.
Yeah, excellent resource. Ellen is a rock star in that regards, and, I mean, she takes 2 hours of me talking and makes it nice and clear, so.
Yeah. Yeah.
Is it a pleasure of the board to take a 4 or 5 minute break?
Yes, it is the pleasure of the board.
Okay. We're in recess for 3 to 5 minutes. We're back in session.
It's not my favorite name.
Thank you. We took a brief break, and we're back to go into the business portion of the meeting. We'll start with old business, and under old business, we have second drafts of 2 policies, so hopefully tonight we can finish these readings or send them back for a minor adjustment, or even make that minor adjustment tonight. So before you, number 1 is the Reedfield Property Tax Assistance Program. And I just want to state for the record that when we have, the second one's a policy, but the first one's an ordinance. The ordinance actually has a legal review, so we're doing a first and a second reading, and we're going to recommend this policy in whatever shape and form it ends up at. But then legal says, gee, you can't do that, and we'll make whatever adjustment is appropriate to make it legal if then we still want to proceed, which probably we will.
Right.
That's part of the process.
I have one comment. I asked Eric about it during our break, but in section 7, second paragraph, 1 to 3rd sentence, it says the Board of Select Board, and it should just say the Select Board. So I would ask that we strike Board of. And to me, that's a change we can make tonight and
Yes.
approve.
Just grammatical.
Right.
The Board of Select Board.
Yeah.
Department of Redundancy Department.
I didn't find anything else. I don't know.
So
if
it would
else
just
did.
read the Select Board.
Yes.
Yes. I was telling Catherine, I had just done a search for selectmen, and then, did a
Isn't that-
change,
Isn't that how government
auto
works?
replace. I
Yeah.
didn't do my work on it.
Department of
So,
So,
discussion or other observations or questions on changes?
I'm just proud that we got this finished out and turned around, and it was one of our legislative goals, I think, and
so I would make a motion that we accept this second reading of the Property Tax Assistance Program Ordinance and recommend that it be sent for legal review.
I second that.
It's been moved and seconded to approve the second reading and forward it for legal review. Is there any discussion on the reading?
Just for a
John?
quick discussion, I will vote in favor of this, although it isn't quite what I had in mind, but it's a start.
John, would you care to comment on what direction you'd like to see this eventually
Well,
go in?
no, I commented at the last meeting what I thought that there should be some type of mechanism for the town to be reimbursed
Okay.
part or all of the
Mhm.
excused taxes, and that's, but this is,
Right, and that,
it's not
this
something that...
program actually doesn't fit that parameter.
Right.
I understand what you're saying.
Yeah.
Well, I appreciate that comment and your pending vote for it. Any other,
I will make a note in relation to your comment that I have had some questions raised about some of the parameters that we have established and whether or not some of those parameters get entangled with or run afoul of state statute regarding this. And what it really boils down to is the question of taxation. And we have home rule authority. We can do pretty much anything we want in most areas of governance. Taxation, however, in certain respects is not necessarily one of them. We have the ability to do just what the state allows us to do. So that is going to be a very important legal question that will be asked about the parameters that we've established, including the income limits, the residency requirement, the 10-year time frame, as well as the homestead piece, because that isn't particularly clearly addressed in state law either. So it is going to take, I think, some pretty serious legal review. Fortunately, our council has worked on these ordinances in the past, and I think that we're in a good position to get good information and good results from that legal review to make this a really effective and functional document that won't put us in any risk.
yeah, I mean, my comment, I guess, on that is our intentions are good, and I understand that, and I'm seeing this kind of ordinance sitting in a number of towns now across the state So hopefully, we're moving in the right direction as well.
I guess another quick question. In section 4, in the red paragraph at the bottom that's underlined, it said that applications made under this program may be subject to public record. What would make it not, and what would make it open? Should that be may or will?
It should be
not?
may, because
Okay.
there may be portions of an application that could be confidential. If
Okay.
somebody submits, something that has a social security number on it, for example, a tax return.
Yeah.
So there are certain pieces of this that
Oh, I
certainly
see.
would
Okay,
fall
I see.
under, but in general, the bulk of
Yeah.
this, the large majority of this would be public record.
Mm-hmm.
However, again, in order to try to encourage people to apply, I won't be, and I hope the board wouldn't suggest that we go and, publicize the list of
No.
people who receive this credit
Yeah.
and their applications online. I think if somebody comes in and makes a request and says, hey, I'd like to know who applied, what the criteria were, and any relevant information that you can provide me from their application, we certainly would need to comply with that. So that's what those two statements really in that section refer to, is the fact that we will be trying to maintain confidentiality as much as practical to make it a comfortable process, but we're a government, this is a government program, to help relieve taxes. It could be subject to that kind of request.
Okay.
So the way I would rephrase that is we will be transparent in the way that we're required to be and want to be. However, we will protect people's individual private information, like social security numbers, that is not normally subject to a public exposure.
Absolutely, yeah,
Bank numbers, routing numbers, or
Yeah.
anything like
Right.
that.
exactly.
Oh, I think we have good ground to stand on because you folks started out with an ordinance from another town. That was
Several, actually,
Several
yeah,
that
yeah.
were already enacted, which would have undergone their own legal review. So unless you guys really mucked it up, I think we're probably in really good shape here.
Yeah,
I just blame Eric.
Well, I think the political angle on that is, as ordinances like this gain steam across the state, then they begin to get more attention, and so
Absolutely,
therefore,
yeah.
they may have more legal exposure, and so we're joining a growing target, if you will. So,
Okay.
All all in favor of the second reading?
Good work, you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, nicely done.
We'll move on to the publications policy. So in front of us is the second draft of the publications policy with fairly minor changes noted in red. I think we only had a couple from last.
That's correct, just
So
two
we're-
or so.
I think we're honed in on this one pretty much, but obviously we'll take a motion and any questions and so on and so forth.
I'll make a motion to accept the second reading of the publications policy
I'll second.
and recommend it for legal, it doesn't need legal review.
Doesn't need
Never
legal
mind.
review.
I didn't mean
And
that.
it will replace the messenger policy.
It will,
Yeah.
yes.
So questions? You seconded it, right?
Second.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I did.
So
I
it's
have
been moved and
none.
seconded. None? All in favor? Thank you so much. We'll now move on to Eric. The draft budget is Windows updated now?
It is, it's just about finished.
Here we go. We're looking at the draft budget overview and having a discussion on that. And in your packet and online, if you're following us in the packet, are the pages that we'll be discussing.
Yeah.
And they're fronted by the warrant process schedule, which looks like this. Kind of shows
Yes.
you where we are.
And I did highlight the three key meetings. We've already had one about capital planning. The second two are the two that we've been discussing tonight, or two of the most important. The third also would be that March 7th meeting coming up this Wednesday, weather permitting. There was a change in date to that second hearing from April 19th to April 26th. So that I wanted to make sure that was very clearly understood and folks had an opportunity to change their calendars. That is now the 26th.
So it moved out of the school vacation week is what that did.
Yep.
So,
Did we settle on the other select board meetings for that month? For
Yes, the
April?
2nd and the 30th,
The 30th and the
the 2nd.
2nd, okay.
If I remember correctly.
they're not on here,
The
but
No.
second is,
Yeah, the 2nd's on there.
the 30th is that normally scheduled, I think.
yes.
See, there's 3 Mondays and
Right,
3
5
meetings.
Mondays.
Yeah.
right,
So-
so we eliminated one. And
Yeah.
I think we said if we needed to, we could meet a half hour early on the 26th,
Yes. Unlikely because we're meeting on the 30th.
a few days later, right?
All right. So the next page in the packet is actually something that I put in from Maine Municipal Association. I've heard a lot of talk about the state surplus that's going up into the $1 billion range, and I just wanted to make a bit of a point about the fact that the taxpayers of the town of Reedfield and many other towns in the state are primarily responsible for a lot of that, because this table shows the amount of money that's been taken out of revenue sharing to municipalities over the past 8 to 10 years and before. Not included are the FY 18 and 17 fiscal years that were also in the $95 million range. So I tallied this up, and it comes up to over $500 million during that time frame of money that the state legislature had committed to provide to the towns and had in the past, and then over time has been dipping into. We've seen this impact year after year with our mill rate. That money keeps going away; it doesn't come back, and in fact, the reductions have been escalating. I think we're finally at perhaps a breaking point where this cycle might stop. But I saw this and I had to put it in because the state might be doing well, but really that surplus has been paid for out of the pockets of taxpayers. So
So the second column over, which is the
Oh,
legislative
keep that up.
transfer, is what you're referring to, right?
yes,
So that should be legislative impoundment of funds that towns really ought to have.
shoulda, oughta, had.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay, so
Is
that's.
that English?
It's not English, but it's understood.
And
It's $85 million in 2015.
And when we had Shanna Bellows and Craig Hickman here for our workshop, they both said that the state is very wealthy.
Yes.
So I just want to make sure that I'm understanding this and that other people might from my question. So just looking at the 2015 amount, the revenue sharing distribution, what the state should have been giving to the towns, because it's money that they've collected, that's correct?
Yes.
It's the
5% of certain taxes. Yes.
Okay, it's 145 million, almost 146 million dollars. They chose not to give us almost 86 million, and so they only distributed 60 million?
That's correct.
That's correct.
Okay.
Which would have been 59% of what the projection.
And for us here in Reedfield, that equated to a couple $100,000, is that right? Or is it less?
I think it would be in that range. I mean, it's sizable over the course of this period. I'd have to do the math on it, but.
Yep, I'm trying to remember, I think it's been about 70,000 or so. Anyway, it's somewhere approaching a $500,000 that we lose each year, so if they keep cutting it back, then that means we still have to pay for the things that we need.
Yes,
Which seems
because,
to be harder to justify with $1 billion surplus.
Yes.
You think?
Yeah,
yeah. But anyway, it's
Thank
one
you.
of the pressures that towns and schools, and this is just the municipal side, the RSUs and school districts are facing very much the same kinds of borrowing. So yes, it's great on one level, but it certainly has been hard-earned.
So I was gonna say, this is just on a town level.
This is just on the town side, yes.
That doesn't count the school side of it, so,
Well, if they keep cutting what they spend, then of course they're going to have extra, because they haven't stopped what they're taking from us.
yeah.
Yeah.
And one would also point out the irony in strangling it until it basically then passes out, and then complaining about the fact that you passed out after all. Look what a mess you're making on the
Well-
floor. So that is part of the irony to me, is you know, you're choking out and then you get a chance to complain about it. Well, why aren't they doing more? Well, you know, you sort of create this cyclical sort of frustration that hard facts are difficult to refute.
The state doesn't deal in facts.
So anyway, I hadn't wanted to get too far off, but.
Now, let's not go there.
Let's talk about the town of Reedfield.
Yes,
Yeah, so
let's.
we'll, so Eric, your procedure will be to go through and kind of give a high level on each department and then maybe, I mean, obviously, the board can ask questions, but I'm assuming you're just going to talk about the bottom line in each department and maybe a major effect.
Yeah, I'll talk briefly about the bottom line in each
Okay,
department. I
great.
really do want to focus, a bit more on some of the later documents or later
Okay.
pages of this
Excellent.
document that are, because we've been through, I think, all of these departments
I think we have.
individually already, so
Yes.
I will just run through them quickly and maybe go over some of the reasons for some of the changes. So we do have an increase in administration of around 4.3%. That is driven in large part by increases to things like insurance under the administration line, Division 10. That one also, you see there's a $2,000 drop in assessing, and that is because we had previously been breaking out our billing for the Trio software system into two departments. 80% of it fell into administration, and then we had one module that we had used for assessing that we had put under assessing. However, because these are all in the same department, it seemed more sensible to put that billing all under one division under administration
And that includes the assessor's
module for.
salary.
Yeah, that does include the assessor's salary. That remains fairly well unchanged.
Yeah.
If anything, there might be a 1-2% increase there for salary.
Okay.
But the large drop, it's not a salary, it's a monthly payment as a third-party
Contract payment.
contract payment,
Contracted.
yes. Yep, so. Moving on to maintenance, we see a fairly large reduction here. That is in large part because of changes to how we account for capital leasing. Capital leases have been moved from this department to the capital reserve and capital savings department.
So this will show up somewhere else in the budget.
It will show up somewhere else in the
Okay.
budget, yeah, absolutely. What will not show up is the $10,000 in interlocal work. However, we will also not see the offsetting revenue we've seen in years past. So even though there's a $10,000 reduction there, it's a net zero overall.
Thank you.
Boards and commissions, moving on, we see a sizable increase here of 352%. I love small numbers because you can throw them way out of whack with a change like this. Basically, this is due to grant funding for a very large project we are doing in town to expand, effectively double the size of the parking lot up at the fairgrounds for use by the many various activities that happen up there, trails, ball field, recreational, anything that happens with Heritage Days and just general use. And that's tied in with also trail work improvements at the Torsi Pond Nature Preserve, repairing and replacing, and even adding, I believe in some cases, bog bridging that is quite old and starting to fail and becoming a safety issue.
So
So
they're looking to double the size of that parking lot?
effectively, yes. So if you
Is it all to the left as you go in?
all
or-
to the left, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So that's the area that has the least pitch and will need the least fill to expand to. It's also, out of the way from some of the other activity that might happen out there, so.
How much is the grant?
The grant is for, I think the total project is somewhere around 40,000 and I think 30 plus is what we're getting in grant matching. So
Very
very,
nice.
very good grant for
So
the
there's a
town.
huge revenue offset on this.
Yeah,
Huge
Yes.
offset,
Yeah.
yes, absolutely.
That's not a taxpayer revenue
Right.
offset.
Yes, there are some costs,
Mhm.
I think a couple $1,000s, if I had to put it in round terms, for things like boulders to go around the edge of the parking area that we would need to purchase, and also some more telephone poles to be laid down in the middle to help divide the parking stalls.
Right.
So some small things that we don't have on hand that we can't draw out of in-kind sources. For example, all the loam to go around the edge of this, we're pulling right from the site. And we're buying, much of the gravel.
The mountain will be
so-
reduced.
It will be pretty much gone, by my
That'll be a
estimates.
good
So, yeah. It's a lot of loam to go around that perimeter. So, moving on, any other questions about boards and commissions?
That grant is 30,517
Okay, perfect.
that you have in revenue.
All right, so that does show that 32,000, around 1,500 then would be, or 2,000, pretty close to, yeah.
yep.
Look at that.
You're
Um,
good.
Amazing how things work out like that.
Yeah, you talk about it for long enough, and doesn't mean I won't get something wrong later, though, just so you know. Town buildings, this one we had previously included as a separate line in the past, however, that now is under the maintenance department. Again, this is our kind of trend to try to consolidate some of these things to make them more manageable and more approachable from a budgeting perspective and from an implementation perspective. Previously, if we had a need in one building as opposed to another, it would have been a little bit more difficult to move that money in short order. This consolidation makes that a little bit easier. So rest assured, all of that money that we had been and continue to budget for building repairs does exist, and it exists under the maintenance department.
Yeah, and I guess I'll make a remark, just for the public who may be watching. When we move things from one department to the other, what we're trying to do is refine the logic of the budget. And that's always an ongoing process, but we really do try to do that in such a way that we're really hoping in 2020 that you'll really see things lined up for comparison a little bit better. But we just have had some areas that we've really not made those kinds of changes to for a long time. So it makes things a little funky, but it's not an attempt to move things around in a shell game. It's really an attempt to increase the logic in years going forward.
Absolutely, thank you. That's a very good summary. And so, for example, the maintenance department, we have general maintenance, building maintenance, vehicle and equipment maintenance, and interlocal work. So those divisions then are broken out further. This is just a summary sheet.
Right.
And we have all of that. So maintenance actually now is very close to truly all-inclusive for all of those things that we maintain and take care of, grounds and such for such. So moving on to community services. We do see some changes here, nothing terribly significant. The biggest is a small reduction in public access TV. Again, this is because we have begun to peak as far as purchasing new equipment, and now we are getting into repair and replacement. Moving on to recreation, parks, and activities. This one, a few small changes. The biggest is Heritage Days. We do have a $5,000 reduction in the overall expenditure. However, this is the off year, so we still are reserving $5,000, or I guess I should say appropriating $5,000 for this, but we're not going to be expending that full $10,000, hence the reduction in that division. Scroll down here so keep everybody on the same page. That happened quickly. Actually, just a second.
There we are.
Okay, great. Thank you. I should just use my mouse. There. We'll use my mouse. All right. So we've gone through recreation and activities. Protection, another large reduction here. This is because we've had a couple of projects that we had budgeted in the past that have come to fruition and completion, and we no longer need to budget for those. Fortunately, most of those had offsetting revenue, so we do see a reduction here, but the net impact overall is probably about $3,000 to $4,000 reduction once you look at the fact that we no longer have those revenues coming in on the other side. Moving on to cemeteries, a small increase here. The cemetery committee has been doing a lot of work to try to understand their needs.
Adjust the spreadsheet up.
Oh, sure, yeah. To understand their needs better, and I think that we are making progress as far as how and when they approach capital and operating work. They're starting to get a really good hold on that. Roads and drainage, we have a sizable increase here. That is primarily in road maintenance. We see an increase because we had budgeted a 2-year cycle of road work for our gravel roads to try to bring them up to the same standards, or as much as you can, to our paved roads. What we've seen is that what we budgeted the first year was inaccurate because we hadn't had the benefit of bids or actual costs. So this increase reflects the fact that gravel road work costs more than we thought it did. So that's a large part of that increase there. But it's necessary work, and I think it's important that folks on our gravel roads receive a similar level of service if possible as those on our paved roads. We do see a reduction of $10,000 in interlocal work, again, so that's reflected, again, that change away from interlocal work towards focusing more on the town of Reedfield. Not so much because of a lack of interest on our part, but because of our partners changing their focus and direction.
And the word for that is mowing.
Yes, the word for that is roadside mowing.
Yeah.
And just a quick question on winter maintenance. The winter maintenance, that is only the snowplow contract? Is that correct?
That is the snowplow contract, and I believe
And the sand and
materials,
salt?
the salt, yes. The sand is part of the contract. It was the salt that
Salt.
the town was paying for.
Okay, and this is a continuation of the current contract for anyone who's interested,
Yes,
correct?
this will be the third year of a 4 extendable to 5-year contract.
Great, thank you.
Yep.
And we need to move the screen again.
I'm managing 2 piles on the screen. Yeah. All right, let's see. Okay, I know you want
The power down below.
That's the power down. All right, well, I've gotten close enough anyway for that. The next department would be capital improvements. And this is an area where we see a large increase, and much of this is offset by reserve accounts and other monies that are available, but not all of it. And what I would say, just in summary, are 2 things. The dam is the biggest part of this, $300,000, the Maranacook Lake Outlet Dam. That is being funded through a bond proposed currently. I don't think that's going to change, and we're looking at a 10-year payback period on that, stretching that out as much as possible to try to minimize the impact on taxpayers on any given year for a project that will have a 40 to 50-year life with a 25-year likely maintenance need for some minor work. So,
But we're not financing the whole 300,000.
we are not. We are financing roughly 175,000 of that, and this is a fairly robust buffer. There's a good chance that at the end of this we might have some funds to put in reserve for future maintenance work, perhaps reducing the need to go to bond again in say 25 years if we needed to repair the gate or something to that effect. So,
Because the other money we've already voted on and appropriated in town meeting, and it's being held in reserve for this project.
absolutely, and
Just
that,
for the public.
that's great. Yeah, I sometimes skip that stuff, but because the dam is one of
That's
those
just a
things.
big number, so
Yeah,
it
it
kind of
is.
scares
It is.
people.
And it's also just part of, it's like, what, 53% of the actual cost?
That's correct, yeah.
Winthrop is doing their own thing.
They are.
Their own financing, we're all doing
Right.
one project.
Yep,
Right.
yep, and they're gonna be raising probably, or $250,000, so, it's going to be a sizable investment for both communities. So that's the first piece, the dam. That accounts for most of this. The other piece, I think, is a bit of a change in trying to refocus our interest and efforts on capital planning and capital reserves and ensuring that we are putting enough money aside every year for projects, whether they're coming up in 5 years, 3 years, 2 years, or the current fiscal year. So we are putting more money aside, and I think that it's the appropriate and responsible thing to do. And I'm quite pleased with how that planning process has been going. I've received some great feedback from the Budget Committee and Select Board, and it is having a little bit of an impact on the mill rate, but I think it's a necessary impact to make sure that we don't have a higher impact later, and we have a more stable rate of savings and rate of expenditure, so that we're not stuck with a surprise coming down the road. So,
Thank you.
Quick question on Guile Hall.
yes.
Are we still finishing repairs or modifications to the front entrance?
Yes,
That's in this fiscal year.
that's this fiscal year. That'll be going out to bid in the next, hopefully 2 to 3 weeks. And what we'll be looking at is just to touch on that, because it's a big project that is underway, to do a design build, to bring the pavement up to the appropriate grade, and correct some of the access issues that we currently have. I have been working with a representative from the state of Maine who handles their accessibility program, and he's had some great suggestions on how to approach that issue, because we could spend $10,000 on engineering when really the simplest solution is to probably just raise the level of the asphalt on that one side of the parking lot and have a small curb there that we can then bring up into that front access way. So, approaching it from a different direction, I think will save us some money and make sure that we're in compliance with what the state wants to see and what the federal ADA requirements are. So,
Thank you.
I'm
that's,
glad you used that resource, that's good.
Yeah, that's great.
yeah, I'm happy that I was able to speak with them. Moving on to solid waste, we see a fairly large increase here, 6%. That is due primarily to two things. Revenue changes, so I guess those two things are actually one thing. Revenue changes in what we expect to see for single sort recycling. In the past, we've actually received revenue for those materials. This year, we've been paying anywhere from $20, $30, $50, $55 per ton. This past month, we're back down to around 30, so it's looking a little bit better. But still, we're going to have a lot of losses in that area when typically we had very small losses or even gains. The other piece is revenues overall have not been meeting projections, and so we are looking at ways to try to make sure that we do capture all of that revenue that we should be receiving, and making it easier for the attendants to get everybody to pay for the things they're disposing of, which has been a bit of a challenge. Things are a bit chaotic down there, and I think the traffic pattern has helped, will help. And then when we move forward with our attendant booth at the head of the I guess, intake area for the traffic, for all the drop-off areas, that should help as well.
Is the revenue shortfall where it usually is?
No, it's one of those things where it's kind of a gradual drop-off, and I've had a hard time pointing out exactly where it is, but it's a little bit here and there. Sometimes we make money on shingles, sometimes we don't. I think that we need to look at the fee structure again, but it's also a fact that when you increase, say, for example, we doubled the cost of construction demolition debris last year, we saw a lot more stuff showing up in the wood pile, because that one's a little bit harder to monitor, and the fees currently are less. So there's a shifting of things that probably ought to be in the demo moving into the the clean wood pile. So I'm looking at a couple different ways to approach that, but first is to actually equalize the fees for those two things. But anyway, I don't want to get too far into the details on that, but yes, we're taking steps to try to correct the revenue shortfalls. I'll adjust my screen here before we move on again. All right, education. Currently flat funded for the purposes of discussion. What we're seeing coming out of the RSU is one number was a 7.15%, I think, % increase. I don't know how reliable or long-lived that number will be. I expect it will likely go down. It does every year. How far, I don't know.
Yeah, and you know, I would remark on that, again, we'll be meeting with them on Wednesday night, so one of the things that we can be also asking about is not only expenses, but, you know, they did have an increase in revenue last year, which was kind of back-ended into things. And again, I would think the state sitting on a large surplus would get demand from the public to address that in some way, shape, or form. So hopefully we will be seeing that as well.
Absolutely. And that would definitely offset some of those expenditures.
Right. I know that they're still in the process of review.
Right.
At the legislature or at the?
No, I'm talking about the
School
RSU.
board.
Oh, yeah, no, they're going through the same process we are.
Yeah, exactly.
Very similar, anyway. Regional organizations, a small increase for Cobussy Watershed and a small decrease for First Park, which is nice, but certainly not everything we'd like to see for a $24,000 expenditure.
I have a thought here, and I think I've shared it in the past, but maybe not last year, but maybe the year before. Can we put the Kennebec County tax in its own department? It really is not a regional
Yeah.
organization that we're a member of. It's really an assessment, and I like having it separate, like the schools, because there's a governance body that we don't control, that controls that portion of the tax. And, you know, again, word at the State House floats around about, you hear it in the news all the time, what we might be doing with county jails and transportation
Yes.
costs in relation to county jails and so on and so forth. That could have huge impacts.
Absolutely, yeah, so
I think you
I'll do
did
that.
pull it out at the end of the budget season last year.
I know we've talked about it
Yeah,
before.
no, I think it must have gotten lost at the end of the season.
Yeah.
Okay.
But I'll make that change.
Oh, great,
It'll be,
good.
I'll just make it a separate department.
Yep.
Thank you.
As I think it should be, I agree. Completely. Moving on to debt service. This is where we see some of those, what am I trying to say here? I'll just start from the top. Fire truck, we have a 23 payoff for the most recent fire truck we've purchased. We have a 2013 road bond that has a 2021 payoff. These are all easily calculated and known quantities, so we have a lot of confidence in these. We have the Renhook Lake Outlet Dam, and that's what I was starting to talk about before I lost my thought train. But we are showing a $20,000 estimate for that. That includes the interest and bond payments, as well as bond counsel, or interest and principal payments, as well as bond counsel. So in future years, this amount will be $2,000 to $3,000 less, and hopefully, assuming that we get a good interest rate or one that's in the range we expect of 2 to 3% from the main bond bank.
And that'll be probably a 2029 payoff.
Yes.
You were talking about
2029,
10
yeah, 10-year. Yeah. And we can look at that later on in the
Right.
sheet. And then we have 2 road bonds, both of which are nearing retirement, one retiring this fiscal year that we're budgeting for. However, as we've seen, paving expenses do not go away, and in order to stay on top of things, we do need to be putting away roughly $250,000 every year to cover paving expenditures for our roadways as they currently exist. Moving on.
But that is one of the great benefits of living in Reedfield. When you
Yeah.
cross that town line, we have nice roads that don't wash away, that have lines on them, that aren't
Except-
ruining your car.
Except for the transfer station.
Yeah.
But that's not a town road,
It-
that's a town
not.
entrance.
It's a town entrance, but and I will say with some real enthusiasm that the state DOT, their 2-year plan this summer proposed should be paving 135 north and south, Gordon Road and Stanley Road. So
Wow.
thank goodness.
Yeah.
Because, we get a lot of complaints about the plowing we have for the last several years, but it's hard for them to clear the snow when you have a 6-inch to 8-inch trough where the wheel tracks are, and it's all scabbed up. It's hard to move the snow off of that, and it's hard to keep it maintained when you have that kind of condition, so.
That is excellent news.
It is.
I'll tell my
It
friends
is.
who live in Oakland who come to Winthrop.
Yeah, they should be doing the whole stretch, so.
Good.
That's DOT's plan. And you can thank, I think, Senator Bellows for forwarding that to us, so.
Yes, we got a note on that.
Senator.
Yep. All right, moving on to the last couple departments here. We have unclassified. And we do see a very large increase in this one. However, that is offset entirely, the $50,000 under Division 15 for the local property tax program, entirely offset by revenues from the sale of a property this year that will be moving into the undesignated fund and will be reappropriated to offset that cost. And this will be a carry-forward account, so that money will remain until such time as it's depleted and then refunded or
Yes.
Yes,
refunded.
right, until we
Yes.
put more money away.
Yep. All right, the last would be general assistance, and we do see a very small decrease here. We had looked at decreasing this a little bit further until we discussed the fact that the LIHEAP program is up for discussion at the federal level, which I see as a challenge when you're taking away one of the very most basic safety nets, just another shift to local taxpayers to cover those expenses. And I hope that doesn't happen, but we're hedging our bets and saying that if it does, we will at least have funds available to help offset some of that, in addition to our heating assistance program, which actually shows up under administration, which I may look at moving down into this department at some point.
So that's a very good review of all the departments. Will you be able to do revenues in about 10 minutes, you think?
I will.
Great.
We'll skip through these graphs and charts. They
The graphs are very
represent.
helpful, though,
They are helpful. They are helpful. They represent everything that was discussed in the.
and particularly when we do the public meetings, we'll
Yeah.
have them on slide basis, so we can...
PowerPoint, yeah.
Yeah, PowerPoint, so we can actually talk about them.
All right, so we will move on to revenues. Oh, sheet 1, that's not what I wanted to do, I must have inserted something there. Make it smaller. Slide it over.
I love seeing this, so education is our highest expense, and it has a 0% change.
Well, that's
I
because
know. I
we've
know.
just plugged in a number.
I know, I'm just loving it right now to
Yeah.
see that. To see any department at 0% would be phenomenal. And we have several that are that way.
But it is important. that
Yes.
It's not an actual projection.
Correct.
It's a marking point. It's like treading water. We'll drown later.
Well, I think we'll probably just swim harder.
Yeah, whatever.
Let's see, have I turned around? I did, I turned around the revenues page.
I've done something here with the view.
I guess while you're looking for that, I would remark that the bottom line on revenues
Is
was a
good.
$255,000 increase in revenues, and our expenses are running around $234 increase. So we're really in balance. We're really in that sweet spot, I
We're
think.
very, very close. I think that the net impact on taxpayers is somewhere in the range of $50,000. So for a budget that's approaching 6 million, is that where we are?
Yeah.
$50,000 impact is fairly modest. If you look at it just in the context of the town of Reedfield, exclusive of the schools, you're probably looking at around, I think, 2 to 2.5 million. $50,000 on a budget of that size is, I mean, overall, it's less than 1% increase, so not even keeping pace with inflation. So I think that we're doing very, very well. So now that I've gotten that zoomed in so that people can look at it on the screen if they choose to, I'll make a note quickly that a couple of the pink, the colored lines that you see there, those feed back into another page on the spreadsheet, and those are highlighted just so that I know, and anybody working on these sheets can know that those do feed back into other portions of the spreadsheet. So. Yeah, and so there we go, $52,000 right now at the top for that very first line. That would be the net impact on property tax. We have tried to budget a little bit conservatively still, but also increase revenues where we've seen a pattern of increases that are sustainable. The economy has been getting better, and that has been helping us out in many different areas. We're seeing a lot more revenue coming in for excise tax for motor vehicles, and a lot of other areas where people, even registering their dogs, that's gone up. I also credit Robin and Anna for their work in really focusing on that and making it a priority. But overall, nearly every area of revenue we have has been able to see some increase, in some cases a sizable increase. The one exception we have is towards the bottom for 5,000, and that is we are pulling less out of our undesignated funds that we have in past years. And again, that is part of a continued effort to budget more conservatively, which will put less money into the undesignated fund, and then the responsible counteraction to that is to take less out.
Agreed.
All right.
Yes, yes.
So that's the administration. We're looking very good in that respect. We have, I think, been able to do a good job there. If we need to, I think that we may be able to pull a little bit more out of undesignated fund, but the way I'm looking at it right now, I think that we should be keeping that money in reserve, so to speak, in the event that we have an increase on the school budget. That would still allow us to maintain our threshold of 2/12 of our operating budget for reserve in that undesignated fund. So we're playing it safe right now. Later on in the budget, the next couple weeks to month, we may be able to look at it a little bit differently. Very few changes in moving on to the next page. Community services, we do see small increases here and there in revenue. Community services. So a small increase there of $5,000 and change. It does result in an 18% increase, but these are all things that we have, as again, I said, animal control, and then a small increase also in library. They don't bring in a lot of money, but we want to make sure that what they do bring in, they're accounting for accurately so that they don't end up with a large surplus. And it's something we've been looking at with all of the various departments and divisions. Moving on to regional parks, recreational parks and activities. We have an increase here for the Millstream Dam project, and that's in part because we expect to be fully executing that project this year, and much of these funds are already raised and sitting in reserve. Moving on to protection, we see a small reduction for tower sites, and that is because we have, again, completed the majority of that project. We have a few things to touch up this year, but we're basically done with that work. Cemeteries, no change. Keep up with the video here. All right. Roads and drainage, we do see, again, this is where that interlocal goes. The offsetting revenue no longer exists. Otherwise, that one is fairly static. Capital improvements, we do see a very large increase here, and that is a result of what we expect to see funded through the bond for the Marinacook Lake Outlet Dam, the 177 and change. And that number probably will change as we get further along, but not significantly. Moving on to solid waste, again, we have reduced the transfer station fees by $2,000, not because we are reducing the cost, but we haven't seen the actual revenues materialize in that division, so we're dropping it, hedging our bets that we might not be able to make that come back, but we're taking every effort to do so. We do see small reductions in a few other areas, a large increase in metal. That's the one area we've been able to maintain and gain revenue in is metal, because the price of metal has been going up reliably. We also see the share for transfer station, Fayette and Wayne. Those are increasing, and those cover the operating costs for those two towns. Moving on to unclassified, again, the Reedfield Enterprise Fund has dropped. This one we typically had funded because we saw revenues coming in, people were repaying the loans. We're at the point now where we don't have any more repayments other than outstanding debt, a few people that are kind of straggling along. So we can't necessarily say that we're going to have that money coming in. However, we do have the money in reserve, and you will, if you look back, see that $10,000 expense for the expense side of the equation, because we do expect to continue to give loans if possible.
Okay.
General assistance, a very small change in that department. And then we have the summary. So I don't know how I did on time, but I moved
Did
through as
well.
quickly as I could.
You did 7 out of 10 minutes.
Not bad. If you have any questions, I'm happy to take them.
Nicely done.
Yep, excellent.
Very good.
I think
Very
I think
thorough.
we're in a pretty good place.
All right. So we have a lot of other stuff in this packet.
We
The
do.
sheets that we have, and I'll just list them, and I'll let the select board pick and choose, to choose your own adventure, where you want to land. But we have a complete preliminary draft mill rate calculation. We have our mill rate history, which includes some interesting data on revaluations, as well as how we have done in relation to the consumer price index and inflation generally. We have a sheet showing use and balances of our designated and undesignated funds. We have a sheet showing debt service over the past 2 years and looking forward about 12. We have a baseline sheet that shows the relative proportion of municipal, county, and school taxes as a share of the overall mill rate. And then we have a summary of changes over the past, since August, essentially. And these are really summary, but they give an idea of where we are and what changes we've made and why. And then we have the 20 pages of the actual budget line item summary. So, where would you like to go?
I'd just like to point out to the listening public that there's a lot of great information here in these charts. That it does a lot to explain things that are out of our control. And I thank you so much for making those, because I know they're very useful to people. Seeing trends is often much more useful than seeing lists of numbers all clumped together. So, really appreciate that.
Thanks.
And you have the backup if they have any difficulty all this backup to look at.
Yeah, I mean, I consider a lot of those extra pages, not extra pages, but those pages that you have they're almost like footnoting in nature, and, you know, they're the drill down. So I think your overview was very informative. I've looked at the other material, and I think as we continue whatever refinement we do, we're really moving forward towards a presentation of a budget that's quite complete. So,
The only place people are gonna get confused, and we'll have to keep reminding them, is that we've moved this somewhere else.
right.
Yeah, yeah, and we've done as much as we can to show that as fully as
Yeah.
possible. I mean, most of those changes occurred last year, a few changed this year, and a few
Right.
more will, I mean, we're gonna move county government out of one area and into another. So that will show a little gap next year when we do the budget of that. So that will be a cycle, but I think you're absolutely right in pointing out that it's a necessary part of the process. Yeah.
I'm down to page, I don't know what page this is on now, but it's the homestead valuation one. What does
Oh.
this cost me? It's the
The
one
what's
just
it- the what's
before
it
the
page.
animal control ordinance.
It's the last one in the packet, the
Yeah,
budget
last
part.
page.
The last page of the budget, yes.
Yep.
It's not everybody gets homestead.
So what's it gonna cost me if I'm a resident?
Yeah,
Does
let me
this
open that
mean,
up.
what is it costing me that other people are getting it? Or what does it cost me?
This is
Isn't this
what's it gonna
something that's not a
cost?
cost? Isn't it it lowers my cost?
Homestead exemption, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, it takes a percentage off your taxes.
Yeah. So the homestead basically exemption takes, if you have a $200,000 home, you will be taxed on $180,000 of valuation. Of that discount, the state will actually, if they honor their obligation, which they haven't for the last 3 years, will be reimbursing 62.5% of that to the town. So the town actually takes a portion of that, and the state takes a portion of that. But, so there is some revenue there that comes in, but to answer the question a bit more directly, yes, the $20,000 gets taken off the top. Those who have the homestead exemption will certainly pay less in taxes than those who don't.
And the bottom line on this is when we forecast our revenue, we included that in our consideration.
We absolutely have.
So it's
yes.
not like we're gonna have a sudden flood of homestead exemptions, although I assume.
We hope so.
I assume that we're promoting it, so, but we've calculated for that.
Yes, yeah, we basically.
Forecast for it.
We forecast. We look at, roughly what we've had in the past, and then we usually add, a 0.5%, 1%, something like that, just a small increase, because it has been in place for many, many years, so most homeowners are aware of it and taking advantage of it. So, but we always want to see more, because there is a great value there.
And if a homeowner doesn't know if they have it, they can go online to the
Town website.
town
Look.
website and look at their card.
Yep. Or they could call the town office, and we'll be happy to help walk them through it and find out, so.
There is a date to apply for that, right?
I think it's April 1st.
Yeah, it has to be done before, I think, April 1st, yeah.
I think the veterans exemption is the
And you
same.
have to have lived here a year?
Yes, you do have to live here. It's not just if you move in October and apply before April 1st, you have to have, it has to be a full year
And then apply before
from April 1st, yep.
Great, I think we're set with budget. Thank you. We'll obviously be continuing to discuss and refine things on budget overview. So we'll move on to consider a first draft of the animal control ordinance, which is in your packets. Thank you for being here.
And this is a revision to an existing ordinance, proposed revision, so,
So I'll let you go ahead.
yeah, great. We have worked together on this. I've worked with Anna and Robin, who both have significant roles in this. Robin is the clerk, collecting a lot of these fees and supporting the licensing work that happens. Also taking care of some of the front desk activity. And Anna, being our ACO, Animal Control Officer, who was out in the field working with a lot of folks on this. A couple things came up that we noticed quite quickly. First was that we didn't really have an effective enforcement provision. So if you look at the first page under Section C, enforcement, or definitions, where are we? That's not right. Where is enforcement? We do define the role of the animal control officer as the enforcing agent for this, and outline some of her
Under
roles.
Article 3, I think.
Article,
Page 4.
okay, well, the definition's under Article 1, Section
Okay.
C.
Right.
It's in two places. I was getting a little bit split on this, but, so we started off by defining the role of the ACO, which was absent prior. And then also moving on to enforcement as well. But a small change for the term nuisance and the striking of the definition for voice command, because we defined it, but we did not anywhere in the ordinance utilize the phrase voice command. So I think we had borrowed from a few different ordinances and not fully gone through that process of making sure that we were consistent. The next change would be the definition of domestic, because we've had some concerns about what is a domestic animal. Is a horse a domestic animal? Does it belong in the cemetery? Things like that. So a number of these changes have been in response to issues that we've had. Moving on to Section D, regulations. We did address the issue of barking dogs and add a much more robust description about what we believe a barking dog might be, and offer some alternatives prior to going to court. The ordinance previously had a pretty short fuse to it with respect to that issue. And it's really tough to have a short fuse on something that is quite subjective as to whether or not barking is repetitive and a nuisance. So we looked at other ordinances and pulled in some language that gave us a few more options and gave a process for working with neighbors to try to resolve issues prior to going to court, which I think is an excellent
That's a good idea.
change. And one that I was quite concerned about, because we have a nuisance barking issue right now, and I was working with the code officer or animal control to try to solve it, and we were kind of charting our own course. Well, let's get them together, let's make them talk, let's try to figure out if there's a way to have a solution outside of finding somebody to be in violations of the ordinance, and then having them pay, or perhaps not, if they don't have the means, legal fees to pursue the issue. So taking, I think, a very proactive step here to minimize that risk and that need. That's the summary for the regulation change. Moving on to Article 3, again, we did kind of reiterate that animal control officer role and the statement that, yes, in fact, the ACO is the enforcement agent for the town with respect to this ordinance and these issues. Moving on to page 5, we have changes under penalties. The intent here, I believe, was to add a little bit of weight to some of these problems, and also clarify the fact that attorney's fees are included with any fees that someone might incur if they're in violation of this ordinance that wasn't explicitly stated previously. So again, we wanted to make it easier and to resolve these issues, but once we got to court, we wanted to make sure that people understood that there's a carrot and there's a little bit of a stick on the other end. So
This is where I actually had a question, was under penalties, and it's a generalized question, kind of asking it on behalf of the public. Where do these fees come from? Are they generated by covering our costs? Are they in comparison with other towns? Were they just made up?
They're state fees.
They're state?
These are the state
Yes.
minimum and maximum.
Okay, great.
And so Anna pulled
Good.
them directly out of that.
Excellent.
Yep. I did-
Because we
yeah.
used to be different.
So,
we
yeah,
made them
so knowing
align.
what our logic is behind it, I think is very helpful.
Yeah.
Great.
And I did forget to say that Catherine was instrumental in this. So I
Well,
apologize for leaving out
No,
that
no, no.
description, but
I did very little.
she initiated this process and helped with a lot of the discussion on it, so.
Good. It's just good to have what you can back into for the source of a fee. How did you
Absolutely.
arrive at that number?
Yeah.
Right.
And one thing we looked at was the possibility of
$5
just.
a bark.
Yeah, $5, oh, Jesus. Just perhaps referencing state statute and saying that fees shall be as established under state law, or something to that effect. But Catherine's absolutely right about that structure.
Thank you.
Excuse me. Moving on, that's it.
So this is our first draft of this ordinance, and this is an ordinance, right?
This is an
Yes.
ordinance
Yep, so,
And it is a current ordinance.
with a long revision history.
Yep.
So we're doing nothing new, really. other than-
right. So do we have any feedback something we see that needs to be included or whatever, or do we just want to move this on to a second reading?
I just want to mention one thing that Eric didn't, which is on the bottom of page 4. There was nothing actually in here about livestock being a violation. And that's why we put in the definition of domestic and then livestock, so that if Anna, as the animal control officer, is responding to livestock in the road, for instance, it's going to
Something that has happened.
It's going to fall under the
Weekly,
same
almost.
category here of penalties and ways to remedy those penalties. So we were pretty shocked when we found out that livestock wasn't included.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Yeah, that was kind of a big deal.
Yeah,
There was at one point.
yeah, because we had to go through
Yeah.
just what state law said because we had no
Oh, yeah.
anything, so.
Yeah, no mechanism.
So I think generally we take a motion to move it to a second reading from first to second. Could I have a motion in regards to
I'll
that?
move that, that
You
we
moved
move it
that?
to a second reading.
Okay, that moves to a second reading.
I'll move that we move.
I'll second,
Go, good.
or I'll give the second to Catherine.
No, go for it.
Okay. I actually try not to second a lot of stuff as chair, but occasionally. So any further discussion? All in favor? So we probably will have the second reading, which will probably have very little change.
Yeah, and without
So-
objection, I'd like to push that through the legal review as part of this second,
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't
reading
you,
process, just
I
to-
think that's a good idea.
yeah. I
So that
mean,
we can get it in there.
Yep,
yeah, because
This is the
these can be a
week.
little tricky, so.
Yep.
It's this week, Friday's the 100 days, right?
We do have a couple different deadlines, but legal review, I think, oh geez, I have that on different,
I have
but
it in
yeah,
my calendar.
yeah. We
okay.
do have some time still.
We'll move on to 18110, and that is to consider a proclamation for National Childhood Cancer Awareness Month. There is a letter in your packet, there is a proclamation, and the month in question is
September, I believe.
September. So, I mean, this is far in advance. I certainly don't have any objection to doing this. What's the pleasure of the board? This is just simply us proclaiming that month, and we would put a note on our website and a messenger saying we're doing that to focus some attention on it, and maybe link to any resources, such as the Facebook page that's mentioned here.
And it's a multi-year thing. I'm not sure exactly how much, it's not a contract, so it's probably all right that we're doing it, but it says from this time forward, we will recognize September as that month, and I have no problem with that, so.
Yeah, and, I mean, we don't have to do that, we could just do it this year and do it every year, but it doesn't really matter. It's a pleasure of the board. I try not to actually make decisions for other future boards, actually.
All right, I would
So-
make a motion that we sign the proclamation for this year only,
Mm-hmm.
and that we do that at our next meeting.
May I have a second?
I second that.
Any discussion?
Just that we should, when we come back and do this, we'll have to appoint Eric to sign it.
Yes.
Or I could just adjust the form. I think that we could probably get a Word document and then have 5 signatures as well, so.
But we could just
I
appoint
think-
Eric to do it, authorize him.
Yeah,
All right.
or you could authorize me or something
select
too. I
board
mean,
chair.
maybe they want the government imprint on it or whatever, so. Okay, we'll bring back a proclamation. So all in favor of the motion? Thank you so much. And then 18111, which is the Spirit of America Awards, which, you know, we did this at the ball field last year. We did it at the beach the year before. This is always a wonderful opportunity. It really brings, I think, the community together, and I haven't got enough praise for what we've been doing the last couple of years in regards to that. So, what do we need to know about this in terms of timeline, Eric, and asking public for nominees and so forth?
Yeah, the process can be initiated anytime. I've got someone in mind actually for one of these awards, but basically what you would do is ask the public to submit nominations for folks they think have done outstanding, or conducted outstanding service to the town in one or more areas. We typically, in the town of Reedfield, do have a set of these awards, and oftentimes offer them to multiple volunteers. We have the Spirit of America Award and also the Unsung Hero. At some point, we might want to consider just consolidating and offering, one, because they're kind of a degree or two of separation there, and perhaps we could just offer, 3 or something to that effect. Try to get more of a handle on this, because some year we've given out as many as 5 or 6, and some years it's 1 or 2. But so far it's worked fairly well to be free-form and organic, to do what's demanded at the time. So.
When do we usually have the celebration?
It varies. We have done it multiple times. Again, last year we did it July 22nd. The year before we did it May 20th. May was kind of windy. July was kind of hot. I suggested maybe sometime in mid to late June.
Sure. So why don't we just, on the website, get whatever we need to do to ask for nominations and close them? Well, it takes you a couple, 3 weeks probably to get plaques or whatever. Close it mid-May? Something like that?
If it could, I think Robin would appreciate having a month.
Yeah.
A month to do the plaques and the certificates and so forth?
Right.
Let's say end of April, maybe, that way. we
Okay,
can-
that's fine.
Yeah.
Whatever you think.
End of April.
So we'll open them right
Now.
away, and
Yep.
it's good 50 days available to nominate somebody, and we would encourage the public to really participate. And I'd try to get that on the front page if we could, of
Yes.
the website, and the messenger maybe. Could I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Second?
Second.
All in favor?